Hello everyone, I'm Jennifer McGrath, Manager of the Water Care Division for Holland Home Leisure, and with this presentation I'll be teaching you how to prepare your pool water for closing, as well as how to winterize your pool and equipment. Feel free to take any notes and contact us at Holland Home Leisure with any questions you have. Okay, let's get started. The question I get asked the most is, when should I close my pool? Well, the goal with winterizing your pool is to protect the pool and equipment from ice damage, but to also do our best to prevent algae blooms, stains, or cloudy water from forming while the water is stagnant. Keep in mind the warmer water gets, the faster bacteria, algae spores, and other organic matter can grow and thrive, especially in stagnant water. While using up the sanitizer, so your chlorine or bromine, we're putting in much faster. This can leave your pool vulnerable to algae blooms even if you have the water properly treated prior to closing. So for the best chance of keeping your pool water in great condition, close the pool as late as possible in the fall, usually mid to late October, and open the pool once the ice thaws in the spring, which can sometimes be mid to late April. During those times, keep an eye on the long-term forecast and plan for the time that works best for you. Yikes! This is what we are trying to prevent. So algae blooms, they are expensive to treat, they take a lot of work and attention, and can sometimes take weeks to get your water back to sparkling clear, even with the best products treating the water. So it's cutting in on your valuable swimming time. A little bit of attention in the fall will save time and money in the spring. Okay, let's get started preparing your pool water for closing. First, balance your pool water. Balancing the water is often overlooked when closing a pool. However, this is one of the most important times to ensure proper water balance for the protection of the liner and the best performance of the products we'll be adding to prevent algae blooms. So first, bring a 500 ml sample of your pool water in a clean plastic container to Holland Home Leisure for one of our professionally trained staff to conduct an analysis and provide a personalized step-by-step guide on balancing the pH, total alkalinity, calcium, and other important water parameters. And did I mention this is always a free service for our customers? Yes, it is free. The testing typically takes around 10 minutes, and then we can go through the results and answer any questions you may have. Okay. Let's talk a bit more about balancing the water. Apart from keeping your pool water sanitized with chlorine or bromine to protect swimmers from bacteria and waterborne illnesses, the next most important factor for pool water is pH. If the pH is low and the water is more acidic, that leads to chlorine dissipating much faster in the water. Low pH can corrode or etch surfaces and equipment because acidic water wants to dissolve stuff into it, which can lead to staining on the liner when you rebalance the pH. And acidic water is one of the leading causes of red itchy eyes for swimmers. Now, on the other side of the scale, if the pH is too high, the water starts rejecting all the stuff that was once dissolved into it, meaning scale can easily form on the surfaces of the pool, like your liner and your steps, and the water can appear cloudy. And with high pH, again, the efficiency of the chlorine can be affected. Algae blooms can happen much easier with a high pH as well. Now, the recommended range for pH when we're using the pool is 7.4 to 7.6. However, when we close the pool, we want to increase that range to 7.6 to 7.8. So when water gets much colder, it can mimic the conditions of acidic water, leading to the same unwanted side effects like corrosion, etching, and the staining of your liner. The next factor in water balance I'll talk about is the total alkalinity level. Total alkalinity is often misunderstood, so I'll talk a little bit about it. The total alkalinity is the measure of bicarbonates in the water that will help buffer or stabilize the pH. I often compare the total alkalinity to the pH's mom. Helps keep it in line. We just talked about how important it is to balance the pH prior to closing. So adjusting the total alkalinity level will directly affect how well the pH stays where we want it to over the winter months. Adjusting the calcium level in your pool water will help protect your liner over the winter. Water and calcium have a unique relationship. Water wants to have a certain amount of calcium dissolved into it. So when there's not enough, the water becomes aggressive on the surfaces it touches. It's looking for calcium to dissolve into it. So the water is touching the liner all winter. But does vinyl have calcium in it? Well, no, but that doesn't stop the water from breaking the vinyl down, looking for calcium, causing the liner to fade and become brittle. Now, if the calcium level gets too high, the water will start rejecting the calcium, so it doesn't want it anymore. So it's not allowing it to become dissolved in the water, resulting in calcium coming out of solution and scaling on surfaces and clouding the water. Did you know that chlorine breaks down quickly in the presence of the sun? Let's talk about that for a moment. So, chlorine has what we call a half-life, or how long it takes itself to be reduced in half. So, if chlorine is not stabilized, the half-life is just 30 minutes. So, let's say your chlorine level is beginning at 1 part per million. 30 minutes later, it's just at 0.5 parts per million. 30 minutes after that, it divides itself in half again and is only at 0.25 parts per million, and so on. So once we stabilize the chlorine, instead of the half-life being 30 minutes, it is 6 hours. So when closing the pool, we will check and adjust the stabilizer level for 2 reasons. So first, let's talk about what kind of cover you'll be using on the pool. If you're using a solid traditional winter cover, no sunlight will be on the water, so your chlorine level will not be affected by the sunlight. Leaf nets they keep large debris out of the water. However, sunlight will still hit the surface of the water. And secure covers, they're made out of a mesh, a really tight mesh. They do keep the debris out, but will still allow water to go through, and a little bit of the sunlight will shine through as well, although not to the same degree as if the pool was not covered at all. And what if you don't cover your pool? So full sun exposure means the chlorine you're adding will not last as long as if the pool was covered. The second reason to check and balance your stabilizer level is for the protection of the liner. Stabilizer has proven to help protect the liner from corrosion and wrinkling.
And check your chlorine level. Before closing, it's so important to ensure your free chlorine is 5 to 10 parts per million. It could be slightly higher than that, but aiming for that 5 parts per million is ideal. And this free chlorine level is what the water will be drawing from to help keep the water clear and algae free over the winter.
When the swimming season comes to an end, pool care can sometimes get overlooked, leading to a demand for chlorine, cloudy water, or even an algae bloom. Now, kids are going back to school, the nights are cooler, and hot swimming days are few. If a pool is closed green, guaranteed it will open greener in the spring. Algae spores can double every 24 hours, so leaving the smallest bit of algae before closing means a swamp when you open. More severe algae blooms take more chlorine to kill in the spring, and then once the algae is killed, you're left with all the dead algae that the filter needs to remove. I've seen severe cases of algae blooms take weeks to clear, even with the best water care products. A little bit of work before closing the pool will save time and money when opening the following spring. Okay, so we've balanced the water, addressed any water quality issues. Now let's talk about the closing products. BioGuard's Hibernate Kit includes HyberShock and Hibernate Algicide, and each kit will treat up to 80,000 liters of water. Let's talk more about these products. HyberShock will break down summer wastes and leave a chlorine residual to help protect your pool water while it's closed for the season. It's specifically designed to perform in the harsh winter conditions. You're going to add your BioGuard HyberShock by sprinkling it over the surface of the water. BioGuard Algicide is the second product in BioGuard's Hibernate Kit. You're going to pour the recommended dose directly into the pool to help protect the water from many strains and types of algae blooms. This copper-based algicide is highly concentrated and again is specifically formulated for your cold water environment. Next is BioGuard's Pool Closing Complete, and it does so many wonderful things for your pool water when you're closing. It protects the liner from corrosion or scale formation, protects the water line from buildup, and it uses powerful enzymes to break down organic wastes, so your Hibernate Shock is going to last as long as it should. Okay, so we've gone through how to treat the water before closing the pool. Next, let's get into the mechanics of actually closing the pool and winterizing the equipment. First, clean the pool. Vacuum debris, any leaves, bugs, or other organic matter. If they're left in the pool, they will consume chlorine faster and they can cause stains to form on your liner. So also brush the walls and floor. Brushing often, again, gets overlooked, but it is an integral part of removing any surface grime that you may not be able to see. If you use a solar blanket, remove it from the pool, lay it out, and clean it with BioGuard stowaway. Over the summer, your blanket will start to accumulate grime and chemical residue, and without a good clean before storing it, your solar blanket can start to degrade faster than needed. One of the great benefits of stowaway is you can fold up and store the blanket wet after cleaning. Stowaway will remove the grime, prevent mildew, and also keep little furry creatures from making your solar blanket their winter home. So to use, pour half the bottle of stowaway directly onto the solar blanket. Brush the blanket clean using your pool wall brush. Rinse it with water. Fold out the blanket, but then you can pour the other half of the bottle of stowaway directly over the blanket and put away for storage. A Rubbermaid garbage tote works well for storage, or just keep it in a high spot. Regardless of which type of filter you have on your pool, cleaning the filter media is an important step before closing the pool, and is also a part of troubleshooting water quality issues. So to maintain great-looking water, we all know the importance of good water chemistry, but the filtration of the water is just as important. So rinsing the cartridge is needed throughout the season to remove larger debris. However, oils, greases, and scale buildup cannot be removed simply by rinsing. The filter bright used will stretch the fibers in the cartridge, allowing the stubborn oil and scale to be removed. As always, avoid using pressure washers on your cartridge, as the high pressure can damage the delicate fibers. Now, sand filters will also use BioGuard Filter Bright. Again, throughout the season, to clean your sand of larger debris, you do that by backwashing, but Filter Bright will strip each piece of sand of built-up grease and scale that cannot be removed by backwashing. We recommend using Filter Bright prior to closing so the grime will not harden over the winter, making it harder to clean, as part of troubleshooting green or cloudy water, and after pollen season. Remove the ladder. Now, in-ground pool ladders, they have rubber bumpers on the ends that rest against the side of the pool wall. Check those for damage. If it is worn or cracked, replace them next spring prior to reinstalling the ladder to make sure that your liner doesn't get ripped. If you have drop-in walk-in steps, here's the biggest tip I can give you. Once you know you are done swimming for the season, remove your walk-in steps. To remove them, you are going into the pool, and it's much easier to do so when the water isn't like 5 degrees. Okay, so let's get started with winterizing the pool. I'll start by going over how to winterize the in-ground pool. So those who have an above ground, just sit back for a second. You'll be draining a portion of the pool, so the goal here is to have the water line approximately 1 inch below the return jets. Now, if you have a main drain at the bottom of the pool, there's 2 ways you can drain your water. First, if your main drain meets the skimmer line at the bottom of the skimmer, just like the first picture shown with the red circle there, you can block the skimmer opening, and with your sand filter on the drain or waste position, turn the pump on and the water will drain out your backwash line. If you have a cartridge filter, divert the water to go out the waste line instead of back into the pool. If your skimmer and main drain line happens to meet in front of the pump, like the middle picture shown, turn your valve to block off the skimmer line so the water is just being pulled into the pump from the main drain line. Again, have your sand filter on the drain or waste position, or divert the water to your waste line if you have a cartridge filter. Disconnect your return lines from your equipment. So your return line would be the plumbing that the water would go through immediately before it goes back into the pool. Every return jet comes equipped with a lock ring and a directional eyeball. The first picture shows how your return may look. So first remove the lock ring and the eyeball, then you're left with the collar shown in the second picture. That collar needs to come out as well. And our blue winterizing wrench does a great job at removing that collar. And the last picture shows what the return jet should look like when you're done. And one of the great tips I can give you about that blue winterizing wrench is if you drop it in the pool, guess what? It's plastic. It'll float. Next, we need to remove the water from the return lines. So using a wet-dry shop vac or an air compressor, blow the water out of the return lines and then cap the return with either a threaded yellow winter plug or the Hayward flush plug. And don't forget, use Teflon tape on the threads for a tight seal and easy removal in the spring. As you can see, that handy blue wrench can be used to tighten and remove the yellow plug. The benefit of using the white Hayward flush plug is getting a flatter surface and decreasing the risk of ice movement grabbing hold of anything sticking out and causing damage. It's almost impossible to get all the water out of the return lines, so protect your plumbing from ice damage by pouring BioGuard's non-toxic antifreeze into the return line using a flexible funnel, or you could even use a section of your vacuum hose to get that in there. If you have a shut-off valve on that line, close the valve. If not, cap the return line with an expansion plug. I just want to take a minute and talk about the antifreeze we're recommending here. BioGuard's Hibernate non-toxic antifreeze provides the best protection on the market for pool lines and equipment. So not only will it mix with any water left in your lines to prevent it from freezing and causing ice damage, it also has built-in lubricants and anti-corrosion properties to help protect gaskets, seals, and the surfaces of your equipment. It has a guaranteed burst protection to minus 45 degrees, so you can rest easy knowing Hibernate antifreeze is protecting your plumbing and equipment even in the harshest Canadian winters. And with the pump off, of course, disconnect the skimmer line from the front of the pump. Inside the skimmer, remove the skimmer basket and weir and store those indoors. And if you're not sure, that weir is a little flapping door in the skimmer opening. I have a little diagram of that there with a red circle around it. From the skimmer line in front of the pump, blow as much water out of the skimmer line as you can using your wet-dry shop vac or air compressor. Close the valve in front of the pump or plug the skimmer line with an expansion plug. And next, you're going to pour BioGuard's Hibernate non-toxic antifreeze into the skimmer line from the skimmer, and then plug the skimmer line with a gizmo, again in the bottom of that skimmer there. And then again, pour a little bit more antifreeze into the bottom of the skimmer. If you have your main drain line connecting at the bottom of the skimmer, pour at least a half liter of antifreeze into that line, then feed down a 6-foot section of foam rope, then cap the line with the yellow winterizing plug. Now, since that line is going all the way underneath your pool, it is impossible to drain the water out. The antifreeze will settle to the bottom of the line to help protect the water down there, and the foam rope will protect the 6-foot frost line. If your main drain line connects to the skimmer line in front of your pump instead of in the skimmer, disconnect the main drain line from the valve and then pour a bit of antifreeze into the line. Again, you can use a funnel to do this or a section of your vacuum hose. To again protect the plumbing and the frost line, add a 6-foot section of foam rope into that main drain line and finish by capping the end of the line with an expansion plug. If a main drain line is not properly winterized, you can get ice damage, and repairing that line can be very costly since, again, it goes all the way down underneath your pool. Okay, so let's talk for a minute about above ground pools. So above ground pools, you can use a sump pump to drain a portion of the pool, or you can use your manual vacuum to drain the water. Again, we're aiming for that 1 inch below the return jet. To use your manual vacuum to drain the pool, you hook up your vacuum into the skimmer like you normally would, but instead of using the regular filter position on your filter, use the waste position if you have the sand filter. If you have a cartridge filter, divert the water so it's going out your waste line. The biggest tip I can give you here is to put your garden hose in the skimmer, so once the water level in the pool drops below the skimmer opening, you'll still have water going to the skimmer to keep that seal strong on your vacuum hose. So basically the idea is the vacuum is hooked into the skimmer like it normally would. Your vacuum head is at the bottom of the pool, and it's sucking the water from the bottom of the pool up into the skimmer and then out your waistline. Just like in-ground pool jets, above-ground pools have a return jet as well. Again, you'll remove the lock ring and eyeball, then you're left with the collar, of course shown in the second picture again. That collar needs to come out as well, and our blue winterizing wrench does, again, a great job at removing that collar. The last picture shows what the return jet should look like when you are all done removing the pieces you need to. Plug the return jet with a Hayward flush plug. So if any external water enters the pool during the off-season, don't worry, your water level is okay to rise above the return line if it's plugged off. Alternatively, you can leave the return line open and let the water just simply drain out your hose. Inside your skimmer, remove the skimmer basket and weir and store them indoors. So again, the little weir is the flapping door on the inside of the skimmer. And then to winterize the skimmer, we suggest you place the cover back on, and that's it. Super easy. Now, if you're covering your pool with the ultimate winter cover, which I'll show you later on in this presentation, you do have to block off the skimmer opening with a piece of foam. Now, if you're unsure what type of cover you're going to be using, just ask. Disconnect the skimmer line in front of the pump, shown in the yellow circle there, and also disconnect your return line from the last piece of equipment the water will go through before going back into the pool, which is shown in the red circle there. It may be your filter, heater, or chlorinator, but really it is just the last piece of equipment your water is going to be going through before back to the pool. That's where we want to disconnect that hose. Ensure the end of those hoses are angled away from the pool, so if water displaces through the skimmer or the open return, we don't want any of that water pooling next to the pool, causing damage to the wall or bottom track if that pooling water freezes. Okay, now back to steps for both in-ground and above-ground pools. So your pump will have 1 or 2 drain plugs on the bottom depending on the model. We're going to remove the drain plugs, allow the water to drain out of the pump, and we're going to put a layer of magic lube on the drain plug's O-ring to help extend the life of that O-ring. Then we're going to put the drain plugs back in. Remove the pump basket and store that indoors. And then fill the pump with BioGuard's non-toxic antifreeze. Use magic lube on the pump cover O-ring, and then put the cover back on. Now, even if you bring the pump inside for the winter, it's still very important to fill the pump with BioGuard's antifreeze to protect that mechanical seal that's keeping the wet end separate from the motor. If that mechanical seal dries out over the winter, it can cause water to seep into the motor and damage your pump. For sand filters, remove the drain plug from the bottom of the filter. Use magic lube on the drain plug's O-ring, and then leave the plug off completely for the winter and allow the water to drain out. If your filter is in a garage, shed, or pool house, attach a hose to the drain to direct the water outside so it doesn't flood inside. And using a flexible funnel, pour a small amount of BioGuard antifreeze into the filter head. This will make its way through the sand and collect in the bottom of the filter, protecting the delicate laterals from damage. Next, remove the pressure gauge, sight glass, and backwash hose and store those indoors. And then turn your filter dial valve to the winter position. If you do not have that position on your filter, set the dial between any 2 settings. This will keep the diverter on the inside up and prevent the gasket from sticking over time. Cartridge filters are similar to Winterize. Remove the drain plug, add a layer of magic lube on the drain plug O-ring, and allow the water to drain. Now, once the water is drained, you can put the drain plug back on. You're going to remove the inner cartridge, if you haven't taken that out already, and the pressure gauge, and store those indoors. You're going to add a layer of magic lube on the main O-ring. So the O-ring that's separating the top from the bottom of the cartridge filter. If the filter is properly drained, no antifreeze is needed inside the filter. If you have a chlorinator or a brominator like the one pictured here, Remove the drain plug from the bottom of the chlorinator and allow the water to drain out. You're going to remove the cover and dispose of any unused chlorine or bromine. Clean the inside with hot water only to remove any residue. And this is very, very important. You do not want to use any cleaners or antifreeze in your chlorinator. The high concentrations of chlorine in your chlorinator or any residue left can react with cleaners, causing really harmful fumes. We're going to remove the O-ring from the cover and inspect that for damage. You're going to apply a layer of the magic lube on that O-ring and then reinstall the O-ring and put the cover back on. If you happen to have a solar heating system on your pool, simply disconnect the intake and outtake from the solar panels and allow the water to drain out. Use a wet dry shop vac to help get all the water out if needed, and if possible, you want to roll it up and store it indoors. If you have a heat pump, disconnect the plumbing at the intake and outtake. Place a layer of magic lube on the coupling O-rings. Then using a shop vac, blow the water out of the plumbing. Add BioGuard non-toxic antifreeze into your heat pump by pouring it into the top intake using a funnel. And as you do that, use a shop vac placed at the outtake and have that kind of suck the antifreeze through the system there. Once you're done, plug both lines using an expansion plug. If your heat pump is not in a shelter, we do recommend you cover it with a tarp for the winter. Use BioGuards off the wall to clean the exposed liner. This will remove grime and chemical buildup and prevent other organic matter from sticking to the liner when you refill. Then you're going to want to ensure the main power to all pool equipment is turned off. So this includes your pump, heater, lights, if you have a salt chlorine generator, etc. Now you can install your winter cover. The two common choices for in-ground pools are the classic tarp with water bags holding in place, or more popular now is the secure cover. The standard tarp sits on the surface of the water, and we use water bags to hold the cover in place. The downside to the classic tarp is that the top of the cover will accumulate leaves and other debris, which will make for some work when removing the cover in the spring. The secure cover is a tight mesh, and it's taut, stretches taut, I should say, over the top of the pool, so leaves and other debris will just blow right off, which in the spring, it does make for a much easier spring cleanup. When installed properly, put it on a secure cover, you can actually walk on the cover, so there's peace of mind it gives you when you have kids or pets at home. So the downside to a secure cover is that the tight mesh will allow rainwater to go through, and so small organic matter will be introduced into the water, which can consume your chlorine or your bromine a little quicker. Now for covering an above-ground pool. The two common choices for above-ground pools are the classic tarp. This one has a cable and winch holding in place, or more popular now is a secure cover for an above-ground pool. Ours is called the ultimate cover. The standard tarp sits on the surface of the water. Downside, again, to the classic tarp is that you will accumulate a lot of stuff on top of that cover, which will make for a longer spring cleanup. Also, with the standard cover, if there's a lot of snow accumulating on top, it can put a bit of stress on the side walls of an above-ground pool. So if we get a winter with a lot of snowfall, keep in mind that you may need to shovel off some of the snow. So the secure cover, again, has a strip of the tight mesh just down the center of the pool. So water will go through, but leaves and other debris will just blow right off, again, making spring opening much easier. The downside to the ultimate cover, just like a secure cover for the in-ground pool, is that rainwater is allowed to go through. Again, it is introducing some organic matter to the pool water, which can consume chlorine in the water a bit faster. If you decide to use a cover that will allow debris or water to enter the pool, it is even more important to close the pool as late as possible in the fall and open it up as soon as the ice thaws in the spring. I've mentioned earlier that it is best to close the pool as late as possible in the fall to help prevent algae blooms, and open as early as possible in the spring, but sometimes that just isn't the case. So just before the pool water freezes, an additional dose of Hypershock and hyperalgicide provides that extra cushion, and then as soon as the water thaws in the spring, add a dose of pool opening complete. This is especially important for those who either don't use a winter cover or those who have a secure cover on their in-ground pool or ultimate cover or eliminator on their above-ground pool, since rain, snow, and other debris can enter the pool water. And we are excited to once again offer BioGuard's No Green Guarantee. If you open your pool prior to May 15th the following year to green water, we will help with the cost of the troubleshooting shock and algicide, up to the cost of the winter kit. To qualify, bring us a water sample at Holland Leisure prior to closing the pool, balance the water, and follow our recommendations for closing products, and you have to cover the pool with a solid cover to qualify for this guarantee. Well, folks, you made it! So thank you so much for learning how to close your pool with me. Like I'd mentioned at the beginning, if you have any questions about closing the pool yourself, we're available to answer those questions for you. Or, after watching this video and you'd maybe prefer one of our experienced crews at Holland Home Leisure to close the pool for you, we can certainly do that. Now feel free to give us a call for more info on pool closing services, or you can book your pool closing service online at www.poolsuppliesnovascotia.pro. And also, if you need any of the products that we talked about in this presentation, you can pick that up in store or again online. Thanks again, everybody.